I'm Madeline, this is Charlie, and today we're talking about books. So today I wanted to do a really simple video. I know a lot of people that want to get into reading classics, but they're not sure where to start. A lot of my friends and family members are like, yeah, I want to read them, but books like the Iliad and the Odyssey are very intimidating to try to pick up and read because they take so long and the language is so confusing. But I absolutely love classics and I want to share my love of classics. So here are the top 5 books that I recommend starting out with if you want to start reading classics. The first is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I know this is required reading for a lot of high schools in Texas and probably the United States as well. I read this in high school and I absolutely loved it. The language isn't confusing. It's a pretty straightforward story about the 1920s in America, and it discusses the Roaring Twenties and the bad and good that comes along with that time period. So it's really interesting and usually upbeat, and it's a pretty quick read. The next, I believe, is also a lot of required reading, and that is, I don't know if you can see it, but is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. As you can see, it's tiny, very small, and it's a Christmas story about Ebenezer Scrooge, who absolutely hates Christmas, and he's an evil, not very nice guy. But one Christmas, he ends up meeting his past, present, and future. And so that changes his perspective on things. And it's a very short book, and you can even watch the movie first. There are a ton of them. I think there's one with Jim Carrey in it too. It's a really simple, easy book to get through, but it introduces a lot of the topics that most classics go over, such as past versus present and future, immortality, and stuff like that. Number 3 is one of my all-time favorite books, and that is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. If you like young adult, you will like this book because this is technically young adult because the characters are all very young. Ponyboy, the main character, I believe he is younger than 15. I don't remember exactly how old he is, but I know he's younger than that. It's about this group of guys who are part of a gang. They're called the Greasers, and then on the other side of the line are the Socias, kind of like how we have preps and goths, or at least we did in our school. The Greasers are the bad boys, and the Socias are the football players and all that kind of stuff. And it goes through their prejudice against each other and how they deal with it and how they try to solve it. It is just so good, and the movie, I believe, has Tom Cruise in it, if I remember right, but it's so amazing and I cry every single time, but it is worth it. Number 4 is another one of my all-time favorites, and it's not exactly a book, rather a collection, and that is Edgar Allan Poe's Complete Tales and Poems. I really recommend reading classic poetry before reading classic novels because poetry is typically easier to read and they're very short, and they introduce all of the concepts and the language that most of these classics use. And Edgar Allan Poe's poetry is absolutely amazing, and all of his books, unlike writers like Emily Dickinson, he's very strict on how he uses the language, and it's really nice to read and it flows really well, and it's a great introduction, especially if you want to read stuff dark like Edgar Allan Poe like I do. It's great to get into. Last but not least is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. This is one of those books that it's very odd. It is such a big part of some people's childhood. I know I grew up with the movie and it's in Disneyland and Disney World, but I feel like a lot of people don't actually read the book. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but if you are going to give classics a try, I definitely recommend this one. It is so good. So good. I am absolutely in love with Peter Pan, just like Alice in Wonderland. I'm obsessed with Peter Pan. But for me, Peter Pan was easier to read than Alice in Wonderland was. I struggled through Alice in Wonderland the first time I read it, But Peter Pan is one of those books that's written childishly, but it deals with a lot of deep-rooted issues like child death and the afterlife and stuff like that. And I wrote an entire page on Tumblr about it, and if I find it, I'll link it down below. But I love this book so much. So that's all I have for you today. Short, simple, sweet. If you have any classic recommendations for me, please let me know. Let me know if you do end up reading any of these. I will be thrilled to know what you think. Bye!